having me out and for hosting this forum on Congress. And I appreciate the chance to address you. What I thought I'd do is introduce myself a little bit to some folks who don't know you, and then talk about kind of why I'm running and how I think we might fix Congress. But I always like to start with a survey. If you're happy with Congress, raise your hand. You know, it's funny, I haven't seen a hand yet. Congressional approval is at about 9 or 10%, and most people are wondering who's the 10%. Did they mishear the question? Maybe they thought they were, someone asked, do you approve of Congress? And they thought they heard Christmas, right? I like Christmas. That's how you got the 10%. But clearly it's bad, and it's hardly been worse. Currently I'm serving as a port commissioner. This is my 4th year. Last year I was the chairman. Prior to that, I served 8 years on the San Diego City Council. I was the first Democrat to represent the 1st council district, which is La Jolla, University City, Carmel Valley, and Penasquitos. I was the first city council president from 2006 to 2008. Before that, I practiced law for about 16 years. I mostly did environmental law. And before that, I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, where my dad was a minister who fought for civil rights, for housing desegregation in the 60s. I'm sure many of you remember Detroit was ravaged by race riots. My dad stood up to realtors and stood up for people who were black or were Jewish and couldn't get housing because they were excluded. He paid some price for that, but I was really proud of him. He's an amazing guy, and you can read more about that on our website if you care to read that story. But one of the most amazing things that my dad did was he put me and my 3 sisters through college on a minister's salary. He did what families did back then. They saved their money. They borrowed against the house. My mom took a part-time job as a church secretary. And I did my part. I worked hard. I was told education was my job. I earned financial aid. I got a low-interest loan that I could pay back over a long period of time. And I got a work-study job. I cleaned the pigeon cages in the psychology department for $2.65 an hour. I used to say that was my lowest status job until I got elected to the city council. Last time I told that joke, I was in front of a bunch of city council candidates. I said, it's okay, it's going to be great. But the point is, America made an investment in me. And today I'm concerned that all across the country, middle-class kids like I was are losing that opportunity, that we're not making those investments anymore. And we saw a fight this summer about the debt ceiling. What was that about? It was a fight about whether America was going to pay its bills. And we waited long enough to resolve that fight through the super committee and kicking the can down the road. And we're facing big cuts at the end of the year because of that deal. But our credit was downgraded as a nation for the first time ever. So as a result, the 40 cents of every dollar that we borrow in the federal government, of every dollar that we spend, is it more expensive than it was before. We're not talking about what we should be talking about, which is investing in America's future to keep us competitive, to keep us the greatest nation in the world. What do I mean? Well, for one thing, we're not talking about infrastructure. It's not just about the roads and the bridges that are falling down, but it's about the power grid, making it smarter and more efficient, saving us money on energy, making our energy more secure, or broadband, investing in internet, so that every kid has the opportunity to be digitally connected, that there's no digital divide. At the port, one of the big obstacles we have in expanding our business, we pay about $60,000 a year in the average job at the port, which is about $10,000 more than the average job in San Diego. One of our biggest challenges is the connections between our terminals and the national system of rail and roads. Those have to be part of a federal strategy to boost trade. We have a federal national system of highways. We have a national system of airports. We've been pushing at the port the idea of a coordinated national system of ports for goods movement. 90% of all goods are moved over the ocean. How about also the cost of education? You know, it's a brain power economy now. Since in the 30 years since I got out of college, the cost of a public education, and 80% of kids are educated at public universities, the cost of a public education has gone up 350% adjusted for inflation. That makes it hard enough for a family to afford to send their kid to college. But imagine at the same time the federal government trying to cut financial aid, trying to cut Pell Grants, and trying to, in the last couple weeks, double the cost of interest on financial aid. That is not going to be how we educate our kids, kids who deserve an education that can help us compete. in the 21st century economy. We have to invest in our kids. How about scientific research? You know, the cell phone that you've all been told to turn off. The guts of that is CDMA, and it was invented by one of my supporters, Erwin Jacobs, who was working as a professor at UCSD. And the technology he developed through basic science research, you know what it's done to San Diego's economy. Qualcomm's our largest private employer. But did you know GPS and the internet were also products of government investment in military research, basic science? And every day on Torrey Pines Mesa, scientists at the Salk Institute or the Sanford Burnham are looking for ways to cure Alzheimer's or to cure cancer, and they'll find it. But we have to make sure that the funding for basic scientific research is consistent and adequate. Or kids who are thinking about going into science in the United States are going to think about going into science someplace else. It takes until you're about 40 years old till you can get a lab and compete for those grants. So we face the prospect that today, kids looking at science in America thinking, this is not the place for me. And that a kid will say, that we face the prospect that the next Google or Qualcomm will be developed or created by a graduate of UCSD, but the company will sprout in China or Europe because that's where the science is supported. Those are the kinds of things we can't do. We have to be talking about that at the federal level, and we're not. I take an approach to my public service. My approach is problem solving and getting things done. And I know you can sit on a lot of committees, you can hold a lot of positions, but the proof is in what do you accomplish. So when I was elected, we had Highway 56, had a big hole in the middle of it for 10 years. Well, we got that connected by working together. In the year 2000, when I was elected to the City Council, we had 365 sewer spills in the city of San Diego. Coincidentally, one per day. Well, over the next 6 years, we worked on that as a group, fixed the sewer system, cleaned it, took television pictures of it to figure out where to fix it next. We reduced sewer spills and beach closure days by over 80%. Created the first ethics commission in the city of San Diego. At the port, we took the idea of the North Embarcadero Visionary Plan, which was conceived in 1998. The idea was to take some of that great geography down by the cruise ship terminals and create a pedestrian space so that people could enjoy the waterfront. There wasn't so much asphalt. It would help the tourism industry and also be a place for us all to visit when we win the Super Bowl with the Chargers, right? There's no place for us to congregate. We're going to have a little time to get that ready. But when I was chair, we were able to put together a plan to get that financed. Today, that's in the middle of a crushing amount of debt. It's going to affect our children, and we're just putting it off. We have to balance the budget. We can't balance the budget on the backs of our seniors and our middle class. And we have to find ways to strengthen the programs we have for them, namely Social Security and Medicare. Social Security is a little bit better off, but I oppose this idea that we would privatize it. You know, if we privatized Social Security like the Republicans want to do in 2008, the value of that whole account would be down 40%. We can't expose our seniors to that kind of risk. And with Medicare, Medicare is really in difficult shape financially. But it's something that seniors have paid into and they've earned. These are benefits they've earned. I have a record of standing up and protecting people's benefits that they've earned, and we have to do that for Medicare too. But we have to make it more efficient. We have to find ways to negotiate the price of drugs so that the cost is lower. We have to find ways to make medical care more efficient through electronic record keeping, things like that. And we have to find ways to make the incentives for care to be provided by doctors more preventative, not just by the procedure, so that we can save Medicare and make it stronger. And with that, I'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
For Americans is unemployment. How do you propose to create jobs and help jumpstart a local economy?
Well, as I said, we need to make investments. You know, one of the things that's happening right now, and I see Congressman Filner here is here, welcome, one of our supporters. What he'll have to deal with is when he comes back to Congress, they've got these automatic cuts in place, these sequestration cuts. I was talking to some people in the military here that if they go into place, it'll be about 60,000 jobs lost in San Diego County just from that. And that's the kind of thing we can't have in Congress. Congress has to sit down and negotiate a reasonable way to balance the budget so that we can make the kinds of investments that I just outlined. in infrastructure, in education, in scientific research, in energy infrastructure and policy. That's kind of what we have to do. And we're just not seeing that from Congress. That's the attitude I'd like to bring. The Supreme Court throws out the affordable health care, which I think it appears that is a real possibility. I think anything should be considered, and I would certainly consider single payer. We have to make health care affordable and available to everyone. And we have to do a lot better in how we manage our costs. We're spending way more of our budget as a percentage than any other Western country, and we're getting much less quality results. And so we have a lot of reforms to do. If the current bill is upheld, I'll commit to work to continue to make that more affordable. Some of the ways I mentioned before, negotiating the price of drugs, prescription drugs, which we don't do as good a job of as a typical healthcare plan. I'll do what I can to make sure that incentives for doctors are rewarded for prevention. Doctors are rewarded not just by the procedure, because if you can tell people about nutrition, if you can tell them the things they need to know to prevent the onset of a chronic disease like diabetes or heart failure for 10 years, that saves a lot of money and it's better for everybody else. And I think also ways of dealing with obesity and diabetes that are coming up. Very important for us to lower our healthcare costs, but doctors need to be incentivized to do that thing and rewarded for that. We don't do that today, and we need to do that.